Before the season began, the expectation to see improvement from Bryce Young were all over the NFL, but instead, we saw this.
And Young is throwing on first down. Bryce Young drops back to pass, middle of the field, and it's intercepted!
And the major talking point around that time was that Bryce Young may be the biggest bust in NFL history, putting him alongside the likes of Jamarcus Russell and Ryan Leaf. But we would go on to see one of the most satisfying and inspirational mid-season turnarounds in NFL history.
Touchdown, Panthers! Monster day for Bryce Young!
As many football fans counted him out,
the play warrants it. I think Bryce Young is done in Carolina
and numbered his days as a starting quarterback.
This brother looks smaller than me, and I'm like, how in God's name is he going to be able to succeed on the NFL level? And here we are with a year and 2 games evidence. It's just very, very, very bad. He probably needs to go to a new situation, but if he doesn't, yeah, the answer to this question, Molly, could be yes.
However, the future once again looks bright for Bryce Young. Even though we don't know how far he will go, we can say that as of right now, he at least beat all the allegations of being the biggest bust ever. But how exactly did he do that? Let's rewind and take a look at this and see exactly how it all went down. Coming out of Alabama, Bryce Young had a fantastic college career, racking up a total of 8,356 passing yards, 80 touchdowns to just 12 interceptions. A Heisman winning season that included around 4,000 of those yards. Those facts led many to believe that he was truly the #1 overall pick. But there was really one problem here. He stood at a listed 5'10", which brings us to the next set of people who saw this as a huge concern.
He looks small in college. What is he going to look like in the NFL? Upside is Tua, downside of very mature Johnny Manziel.
Now, up until this point, he has dealt with people obviously having concerns about his smaller stature his entire football career. However, the NFL is a different animal that other Heisman winners will go on to find out quickly. The big question, though, for the Carolina Panthers became CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. Despite his height and the fact that not everyone in the organization were on the same page with this selection, the Panthers will go on to draft Bryce Young with the #1 overall pick, becoming the next quarterback to attempt to revive a struggling Panthers franchise, which has been one of the worst organizations in recent memory. Since their last Super Bowl appearance with the help of star quarterback Cam Newton in 2016, the Panthers have a record of 46-68. Since 2019, the year that Cam Newton played only 2 games due to injury, which was also his last season with the Panthers, the organization has had 5 different starting quarterbacks in the rotation, including Cam himself. On top of that, they just hired recently fired head coach Frank Wright, who was just let go by the Indianapolis Colts. On top of that, you have an owner in David Tepper who makes impulsive decisions when it comes to making any type of move concerning the organization. So you add Bryce Young to a previously 7-10 team that only added Adam Thielen in the offseason to help him after trading away their only weapon in order to get Bryce Young in the first place, and a team that also had a bad offensive line at that time. Okay, what could possibly go wrong? Well, let me tell you, they fired Frank Wright due to a lot of reasons, but it was following his 1-11 start. By the end of the season, the Panthers were just 2-15, ranking dead last in total offense and defense. Bryce Young would finish with 2,877 passing yards, 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Not great numbers whatsoever. But to make matters even worse, the quarterback drafted with the #2 overall pick was having an historic rookie season. 4,108 passing yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, which adds to the pressure for Bryce Young to perform well that year. In particular, it will be clear though, CJ Stroud was having the better season of the two. He would go on to win the NFL Rookie of the Year, while Bryce regrouped and prepared for the following season. Some argue CJ was in a better position, blaming the lack of talent and coaching environment. However, as we all know, the NFL is a harsh league and they will replace you rather quickly. Despite your situation, a lesson many NFL players learn, and for Bryce, he would see that in full effect the following year. The Panthers would hire Dave Canales, who was previously the OC for the Buccaneers, who played a part in the resurrection of Baker Mayfield's career. So with that move, I'm pretty sure they were hopeful that he could do the same thing for Bryce Young. However, as we would see in the first 2 games of the 2024 season, Bryce Young's production would be relatively the same. No touchdown passes, 3 interceptions, and a total of 245 yards through the air, with his second game having a total of 84 yards, which led to this very moment.
Sitting Bryce down here after yesterday, just went home, watched the film. This is the best decision for our group to give us our best chance to win this week.
Making this trade by the Panthers to get Bryce Young a little worse by the second. So it was at this moment many at that time thought Bryce Young was done in Carolina and maybe done in the NFL as a starter completely. As the last Bryce Young fan left, I asked myself these 3 questions. Where is that arm talent? Where is that confidence? Where is the guy who could throw in tight windows? I would later get my answer, as this tweet floated around the internet showing the similarities between Bryce and Jamarcus Russell. It was a possibility that guy was gone, and there were many who believed Bryce Young may be the biggest bust of all time. And to make matters worse, in Andy Dalton's first game, he balled out, putting into question Bryce Young's talent and potentially laying to rest the narrative that he simply doesn't have the weapons. That wasn't until reality set in, that maybe, just maybe, the Raiders were awful and the Panthers are slightly above it. They would not win another game with Bryce Young on the bench. Andy Dalton would throw 6 interceptions in that span with just 4 touchdowns. But even that wasn't enough for Bryce to get reinserted into the starting lineup, as we would see him get garbage time minutes in order to protect Andy Dalton. That was until Andy Dalton was unfortunately involved in a car accident. Thankfully, everyone involved was okay, but he would hurt his thumb in that accident. But this meant Andy Dalton would not be ready to go for the following game against the Denver Broncos. So this led to Bryce Young getting the starting nod once again. Granted, he didn't win his first game back against the Broncos, a top 10 defense by the way, but he looked entirely better than he did before. 224 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions. However, as the weeks progressed, we would continue to see improvement. The following week, 171 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception against the Saints. I know it doesn't sound like much, but the fashion in which the game ended shows exactly what you wanted to see from a Bryce Young. He finally threw the ball more than 10 yards down the field on occasion. He ended the game on a great pass right here to Leggett that led to the game-winning run by the breakout man Chuba Herbert. The Saints will go on to fire head coach Dennis Allen after this loss, mainly due to the fact that they were underperforming after having such high hopes in the beginning of the year. And that would not be Bryce Young's only victim. The following week, he would beat the Giants overseas in overtime. He did get some help with this fumble. He only had 1 touchdown pass and 126 yards passing, but he made key throws, took care of the ball, and in his win, once again, it resulted in someone losing a position they once had. Daniel Jones would be demoted in a move a lot of us are not surprised by before he was let go by the Giants entirely. But at the end of the day, it did happen after a loss to Bryce Young and the Panthers. He would continue to show flashes the rest of the way, 263 yards and 1 touchdown against the Chiefs after leading what was a game-time drive in the 4th quarter. However, they would not be able to succeed in that comeback attempt. He had 298 yards, 1 touchdown in a overtime loss to the Buccaneers, a near steal of a game against the Eagles where Leggett dropped the potentially game-winning touchdown pass, and although he looked pretty good at times and overall decent, he would have a pretty bad game against the Cowboys, although he did get a highlight out of that game. He captured his 3rd win of the season against the Cardinals, which eliminated them from playoff contention. The Bucs would not take them lightly this time in a 48-14 loss, but his most impressive game of the year had to be his final game of the season. 251 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns on top of that in a 44-38 win over the Falcons, who would miss out on the playoffs because of this loss.
I heard they got that on camera, so they told me. Nah, it was definitely not planned. It was just confidence in Tommy. I knew he was open, so when I threw it, I knew he was gonna catch it. So, yeah, I don't know. It was like a reaction. I never think about it, but yeah.
And despite the Panthers finishing 5-12, there are some improvements and huge takeaways from this season. Offensive line finally improved, finishing 8th in the NFL, which helped us see the maturation and development of Chuba Herbert, on top of giving Bryce Young more time to throw. So remember those questions I had earlier. Where's that arm talent? Where's the confidence? Where's that guy who could throw in tight windows? He seems to have finally arrived in Carolina. Will he become a permanent resident in the area? I hope so, even though it's too early to tell. But if you can get him just one more wide receiver, surround the team as a whole with a better defense, we just might see something special in Carolina. But it takes a complete team, because as we have seen before, a quarterback cannot do it alone. Take Joe Burrow with the Bengals for an example, who had his best season in 2024. However, they still missed the playoffs. For more on that, check out this video.